The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Your discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows.
Because my nickname there is Big Chief.
Fortunately not, neither do I.
And I shot it, and the clouds opened and the sun came down.
You carry an appendix somewhere, above the good stuff below the belly.
I saw unicorns running around with bunny rabbits. Just weird stuff, man.
I would prefer to be called a shooting coach.
This is the After Action Project, and we're bringing you the student's perspective on firearms training. This is the podcast that takes you inside the eyes of the student and the mind of the instructor, from practical to tactical, medical to legal, and everything in between. If there's a course for it, this is your fly-on-the-wall After Action destination. This is the After Action Project.
Stay tuned tonight throughout the broadcast. We're going to talk about a couple giveaways that we have for you folks out there. If you want to get a head start on that, visit afteractionproject.com/giveaway. If you like what we're doing and would like to help support the show, visit patreon.com/afteractionproject. Tonight's episode, just like every episode, is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. Be sure to check out the other great podcasts on the Firearms Radio Network by visiting firearmsradio.tv. And tonight, what you all came here for, we are joined by Scott Jedlinski of Modern Samurai Project and his student Jim. Together, they're bringing us into the student seat of Scott's RDS Pistol Course. And before we get into that, Scott, why don't you talk to us a little bit about how you got the nickname Jedi, if you don't mind?
Oh, that's easy, bro. So I'm half Korean, half Polish. So that wigs people out, and they don't know what to do with my last name. So I've been basically Jedi since 77. I'm an Air Force kid. So that's how those two ethnicities got together. Walked in the Monday after Star Wars came out. Sister Mary Xavier Elizabeth said, "Scott, your last name sounds like Jedi." I said, "Yes, it does." And I've been Jedi ever since. Every 2 years back then, when you used to move in the Air Force every 2 years, I wouldn't say anything. Within 2 weeks, people would go, Dude, your nickname should be Jedi. Have you ever heard of that before? And I'm like, no, fam, you're the first one.
First one.
You can have first nicknames, though, I guess, right?
Yeah.
It's neither funny nor original.
Nice.
Yeah.
But it sticks and it works.
Yep.
Jim, talk to us a little bit before we get into it. Talk to us a little bit about your shooting background and then how you came to be a student in Scott's RDS Pistol Course.
Sure. My shooting background, really first, any type of gun style, Boy Scout. Growing up shooting the BB guns, air rifles, and things out of camp, it was always something that I gravitated towards. I really enjoyed it. Spent a lot of my time out there on the range and was pretty. I could run a BB gun pretty good. I don't want to brag, but yeah, exactly. I hit those good splits. And so then I joined the Army National Guard straight out of high school. And went to basic training, was a military police officer, so got rifle and pistol experience in a formal setting or semi-formal when it comes to pistol with the Army, at least in 1999. Then started my law enforcement career, served with the Madison, Wisconsin Police Department, where I, of course, went through their firearms program and their continued in-service program. Spent about 4 years there, and then left there to go to the Federal Air Marshal Service. Spent almost 4 years in the Federal Air Marshal Service. Obviously, in that program, in the buildup or the initial training program, very heavy emphasis on pistol skills and formal training, very structured, one-on-one, individualized firearms coaching and firearms instruction. So that was really my kind of first view into really, really specialized, super finite pistol skills, breaking it down step by step and getting really solid fundamentals with the pistol. I left there to go to my current agency where I'm at out here in the western suburbs of Illinois. Again, firearms stuff, firearms instructor now, a bunch of different things in overall shooting. And then got heavily involved in social media forums, specifically primary and secondary. and had seen Scott on there and stuff, and went to the first Friends of Pat Rogers Memorial Training event, and was shooting on the line next to Jedi, and I was kind of like, "Hey man, you shoot badass," and he's like, "Hey, you don't totally suck." And I was like, "Hey," and so I was like, "Hey, one of the things that in my area, there was no red dot pistol. There was nobody here seated in that training. It was a tech that just wasn't prevalent outside of maybe competitive shooting, but in the Chicago area, especially even just 3 years ago, not a lot of it going on open in the area. It's Chicago, man. I mean, it's not like out in the Virginia area where there's a mash all the time and it's just part of what happens. And so I was like, hey, let me shoot that gun. He's like, all right. And I shot it, and the clouds opened and the sun came down, and I saw my hit. I saw the light, and I was like, oh, yep, this is it right here. Everything that everybody talked about has just been confirmed in firing a few rounds. Like I saw the dot, I saw the light. And so I realized that there was definitely going to be value in it. And so forged a relationship with Scott and continued to converse online post Friends of Pat, and decided that I was going to head into the red dot game. Fortunately, I'm in a situation where my other half is a flight attendant, so I get her benefits. And so I flew out for a day to train with Scott, went to a range. He's like, hey, let me show you this. Let me start you out the right way. And then I came out again and took, I think it was your second class, your second or third class. That you offered as a formal training class.
Yeah, I think it was the third. It was the third
class. Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
And that was the RDS Pistol Course.
Correct. Yep.
Scott, talk to us a little bit about the origin of that class, what got you into instructing, and then we'll get into gear after that. But what made you start offering the RDS Pistol Course, and how did you develop the curriculum for it?
Yeah, I will tell you that the person that gets almost complete and total credit for dragging me kicking and screaming into the instructing game is Matt Landfair, primary and secondary. It almost got to the point where he didn't give me a choice, right? He was just like, hey, bro, you need to teach. You're putting out good information, and people they're not getting it, if you're not teaching. So he set up the payment site. He set up the script. He did all the stuff with me, right? He said, all you need to do is go find me a range. And I'm like, all right, well, the only thing I need to do at this point is show him that this is not going to go anywhere. So my buddy Paul has a ranch about 20 minutes away from me with about a 25-yard range, good width. And I said, hey, man, can I use it? He's like, yep, what day? Here you go. Boom. So we posted it up, and I think it was about an 18-person class, and I think it sold out in an hour.
Wow.
For a one-day class. Yeah, and I was like, oh, okay. It was very well received, so much so that there was another 10-person overflow, and I had the same class 3 weeks later that also filled up, right? And then to bring me back to humility, I had another. How many people were in that class, Jim? 14, 15?
Yeah, I was going to say 15 off the top 15. Of my head.
Day one was fine. Day two was wretched as far as the weather goes. It sleeted, it snowed, it rained, it was howling wind. The only thing good about day two is it was good people coming together and shooting, and nobody died shooting a red dot in the rain. So we kind of proved that.
I thought that was 100% guaranteed to happen, that red dots will get you killed in the streets if there's a little bit of precipitation.
It has to be, because so many people say it, you know what I mean? But unfortunately it is not. So, or fortunately it is not. I'm not sure.
So Jim, if we can switch over to you, tell me what kind of gear requirements that you heard about before the class, and then if you can follow the answer up with, I wish I would have brought.
So as far as gear goes, one of the things for me was in this, I was also looking at starting to switch to appendix carry.
Okay.
And so I came into it as that I was going to learn this complete new system as a whole, that I wasn't going to baby step my way into it, that if I'm going to jump into something new, let's just embrace this entire system and see if it's going to be my jam or not. Okay. And so I had actually already picked up and set up a Rowan special based off what I'd shot that Scott has. So I compensated 19 with a Trijicon RMR on there, all set up in a Filster holster. And let's see, at that time I was using an Aries gear belt, and so I was set up pretty well. The biggest thing for me was reloading. Okay. And setting up for reloads to do things and just having that kind of convenient and set up the way that I kind of would carry it. Because for me, it was also a class where it was like, all right, I know that this isn't a heavy reload class, but I want to kind of try to work this a little bit to see if I can incorporate this into my style of carry. And let me see if I can check this out. And it just didn't go as well as I would have hoped that it would have.
So when you say, and not to get too far off the subject, but when you say you had some issues with reloading, tell me about your you carry appendix somewhere, above the good stuff below the belly, the tactical shelf as we call it.
Yep.
What type of magazine carry do you have? Because I know some people have, like, they still go, to their weak hand for the reload on the magazine. Mm-hmm. People go straight to their appendix. What setup do you have that you're running right now?
So right now, if I'm carrying a reload, I'm currently checking out and trying one of the LAS concealment, the Ronin 3.0s with the sidecar, but it's one of the ones with the flex cord. Before that, I've used, and I will still occasionally use Filster Flex setup. With a pouch offset a little bit, offset to the left. I'll be honest, when I'm carrying a reload.
Yeah. So
I'm not going to pretend,
So just for our listeners, can you tell us what made you choose to carry appendix, and what kind of lifestyle changes did you have to make as far as like clothing, physical fitness, whatnot?
The biggest thing that made me change to appendix was just, first off, being introduced to it and shown it and trying it and realizing that it was more efficient. I'm a huge efficiency guy as a police officer, as an instructor, and things like CQB and stuff. I think efficiency is of the utmost importance, sure, especially when training and looking at across the board of like an entire agency and police department. If I can be more efficient, it takes less time to just show efficiency than it does to try to break down every little thing. So if I can be efficient, then I can make people better, easier with less work, which is what I look to try to do across the board. And it was very clear immediately upon trying appendix. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is it. I had seen guys in the Air Marshal Service carry appendix, but for me, there was no real formal training on it. There was no like, hey, do this, try it here, get a wedge, try that. And so it was trial by fire that I immediately abandoned because it was very uncomfortable sitting in my seat, for 16 hours flying Indian. I was like, this is dumb. Why would anybody do this? And then as I was shown tips and Jedi talking about how to carry appendix and things like that, I was like, oh no, this is perfectly acceptable. I'm not a medium shirt wearer to begin with. Yeah. So for me, I didn't really have that much of a lifestyle change. It was more just being cognizant of how I moved as far as bending over and things like that. I have a daughter who's younger, and so just kind of positioning her on myself was really the only change that I really actually truly needed to make.
Got it.
Scott, I want to circle back to the class, but since we're on the topic of gear, in your non-appendix specific courses, what gear and carry positions are you seeing students showing up with?
So generally when students come to my class, they're preloaded, right? Unless it's an LE class. I would say that 80% if not 90%, show up appendix, right? Because they probably heard about the POI, and I go over those draws in depth, right? Because the main reason why people can't find the dot on the draw is because it starts with the fact that their grab is horrible, right? But if they show up in an ALS, SLS combo, I go over that briefly, enough to get them efficient on the draw. If they show up in a 3 o'clock, holster, it's basically the same as a retention holster, the way that I teach it. If they show up in a gamer rig, I make fun of them incessantly and add 0.2 to everything they do.
So can you, for our listeners, can you tell us what a gamer rig is?
Just something with zero retention, no passive, no nothing. And don't get me wrong, everybody knows who knows me. I love competition and stuff like that. But my class is not generated really to any specific tactical or competition person, But like I say, I do everything for self-defense. Like I compete to get better at carrying and shooting my gun. And you will not, I don't think you're really going to get the full flavor of my class if you come to it in a gun bucket, for lack of a better term. I hope that makes sense.
Makes sense.
So Jim had mentioned something earlier about starting. He wanted to start off the right way. Where do you think, with red dots gaining popularity at the rate that they are, what are some mistakes folks that are putting red dots on their gun? What are some mistakes that they're making in that process? Should they come out and take an RDS course first without investing the money in modifying their handgun and adding a red dot to it?
No, so people say that you should do that, take a course first. And while I would love to have you in my class, one of the things I pride myself on is if you come in and you are a super high level shooter or a super beginner shooter, I'll be able to give you some things to make you better, right? To say that you should take a course when you're switching from irons to a red dot is like saying you should take a automatic transmission course to drive your car when you're switching from manual. That's a ridiculous statement, right? It's a game changer as far as the ease of it. If you're doing things correctly, at the risk of sounding, I'm not going to sound like a jerk by saying this, but if you're going to listen to people on the internet, especially with the red dot, listen to people who've actually done something with it. All right. Teaching classes is not doing something with it. What accomplishment do you have? Do you carry a red dot on duty? Do you have a high level classification in competition? Have you won a set of high level standards that have, to a metric you didn't agree to, but you left that high level, right? Because words are words. But what have you done with it that you have followed a path, used your methodology, and accomplished something with that piece of equipment? That's all. Other than that, bro, you can learn oh, sorry, I almost swore.
It's okay.
Yeah, you can say shit on our podcast.
Yeah, I know, man, but you can ask Jim, bro. I'm prolific. Once you open up that floodgate, bro, you're going to get...
He's not lying.
Yeah,
he's not lying.
I'm prolific. Me and Bill Blowers are after the swearing championship tactical award.
Words are words.
Yeah. Just because you strapped a red dot to your thing, if you haven't done anything with it, why? There are so many amazing instructors out there that have actually done a lot of research with the dot, right? That may or may not agree with me. I don't really care, but what have they done with it? You know what I mean? The fact that you're an instructor and you slapped a red dot on your gun doesn't mean you can teach it, right? It doesn't mean you can't, but man, why not go to a dude who's done something with it, right? Again, not to make this sound full capitalist, but, I'm a masterclass shooter in carry optics and I have a fast coin. Jim carries one on duty and teaches a accredited IALETA class and has a very successful, business of his own. Aaron Cowan, has done research upon research upon research on these things. Bill Blowers doesn't teach one, but my man has been a forerunner of carrying a red dot on duty and the things that he can do. So look at people who've actually done things with a dot to take that class. Sorry, I'm on my high horse. I'll back off it now.
No, that's good. That's good. I want to, before we get off of gear, I think with red dots, especially with red dots, I think, we've gone through the phases with, this gun or that gun, the 1911, the Glock, the SIG. But I think with red dots gaining the popularity as they have, and with newer companies entering the red dot, market, I think there's a lot of mystery around which red dots work, which red dots work well for taking your money, but will crap out on you. So if Jim and Scott, if you guys wouldn't mind talking a little bit about in the classes that you've taught and that you've taken, what are the red dots? What red dots are performing really well? Which are the red dots that you're seeing in class that just don't meet that mark? And somebody who's considering purchasing a red dot, if it was your friend or your family member, what are a couple dots that you're recommending for them?
Go ahead and take that, Jim. I already pissed off the internet, so go ahead.
So now it's my turn. Because I ain't gonna lie. Well, for me, my number one gold standard is the Trijicon RMR. My current duty setup and carry setup is a STI Staccato P Duo with a Trijicon RM09. I use a 1 MOA dot. The RMRs that I have seen in all of my classes on duty guns have performed when installed correctly. Have performed. That's all there is to it. Mine are in the tens of thousands of rounds. Have been through everything. They've been through FBI firearms instructor school. They've been through FBI carbine instructor school. I've been through ballistic shield instructor school, and I can't break it. The Delta Point Pros that I have seen made by Leopold have fared well in class. I have not seen many in this area. The number one by far is the RMR. The acros that I have seen in class, barring the adjustment issue, or in the first version, there's an updated version out now that has addressed some things. But the only complaints I've had with them haven't been shooting wise during class. They've been before or after with the adjustments, either being stripped out or too loose, and then a battery issue that may or may not be a big deal, but doesn't relate to a gun going down during class. Vortex optics have been okay in my class. I've had an issue with a couple of them electronics wise, but they've kind of fixed themselves during class. But as far as long term goes, just not quite there as far as the electronics being able to keep up with a higher round count. And the worst performing optic that I've seen in my classes by far are the SIG Romeo optics. The number one optic that I've seen have issues in classes, to the point one of them, a catastrophic issue that he had to use a different gun, is the SIG. That does now. I know that they have like different ones out now. We're talking like what the original ones put the shroud over it. But that was even still the same internal. So this isn't the current SIG that's out now, SIG Romeo that's out now. It's the original version of it.
Yeah.
Is that in line with what you're seeing, Scott?
For the most part, so I'll run through mine real quick, right? So, the head honcho is still the RMR, been around the longest, been the most versions, the most robust, yada, yada, right? So, the Type 2, put blue Loctite on your screws, unless it's an ATI gun, don't do that. And go shoot. The only thing you have to be careful of is certain Cerakote versions and a very limited serial number range. They didn't put enough glue on the emitter glass, so those things fall out. If all of a sudden your 325 dot turns into a Pac-Man looking shape, your emitter glass has fallen out. Hit up Trijicon. They'll replace it super, super quick. Number 2, it used to be the Delta Point Pro. I like the Delta Point. Don't get me wrong. I have not seen as many issues as other people have seen, but I'm an RMR guy. So, probably the Delta Point I have, on my 365, because some departments are SIG departments. This probably has about 4,000 rounds through it, battery still going. Yada, yada. So no issues there. But the Delta Point, not the Delta Point, but, the thing I get excited about is number 2 is the Hollow Sun versions, the 507C and the 407C, everywhere between mine, which has probably got close to 7,000 or 8,000 rounds on it. The 2 MOA dot's awesome. Not the biggest fan of the 30 MOA, but I'm going to say the dreaded internet statement. If it works for you and you find benefit from it, then knock yourself out. There is a large agency which will be remain nameless that I know of that strapped one to a 19 MOS and put 10,000 rounds through it in 1 week. And then when I went out there, it put another 1,000 rounds in 2 days. So that price point with the Hollow Sun is very exciting. I get it, guys. Chinesium. I get it. The Chinese invented gunpowder. Get over it. Vortex, exactly what Jim said, right? It is such a box of chocolates. I don't know if it's an optic error or a user installation error. That being said, Vortex is always working hard to get their products better, so don't count them out, right? The Acro, I like the Acro. Is it big? It's not that big. Does it look like a mailbox on your gun? Of course it looks like a mailbox on your gun. The battery life is less than overwhelming. But if the feature set of a closed emitter resonates with you, awesome. Still looking for that OIS in the rain, though. Still looking.
Yeah.
Still looking.
Yep.
But I'll just final up, and I'll probably get angry emails from a British email. The only optic that I will absolutely make fun of you if you come to my class in is a Shield RMS. They're horrible in every way, unless you got it for free.
Are they giving them out for free?
Absolutely.
And the RMS, that's not a. What's the price point on the Holosons?
Under 300. I mean, I forgot the Hollow Sun. The Hollow Sun, I've seen Hollow Suns coming through my class. I have one that's at about 3,000 rounds on one of my lower count guns. No issues with those either. They're performing really well and are very appealing as far as price point goes.
With the current version of SIGs, I'll say one thing with the current version of SIGs, which is like Mod 3 version 10. With the steel cage and the glass is not forward of the shroud and all that other stuff. The biggest issues you had before was the dot not being bright enough in bright sunlight, and the battery door cover not being fully secured and or coming loose, right? I think they fixed that with the new one. I've got a SIG Pro back there. The dot's super bright. It still has the shield on there. And then what's the new one they're coming out with? It's like the SIG WMD or something.
Yeah, some crazy.
It looks like an L can.
Yeah.
It literally looks like a tiny little L can on your gun. And I would tell you it looks promising. The only disappointing part of all that is they're very proud of it. I think it's running like $650.
So one of the other brands that I've been kind of sort of looking at in the last month or so, it's a sponsor on one of my favorite podcasts is Swamp Fox. Have you guys ever had any, I mean, if I'm about to buy a new RMR for my gun or a red dot, is Swamp Fox something that I should look at, or should I just stick with the Hollow Sun type, Trijicon?
You, me, you. Who do you want, Jim? What do you want?
So I have a friend of mine who's a deputy in the county south of me. has one. He's been running it on one of his guns a little bit. He's got good time with it. I don't have any time on them. I know a little bit about their inner workings and some of the products that they're looking at trying to bring to market and looking at what's value added for shooters. So all I can say is that they're looking at the RDS, I guess, issue or availability from a shooter's perspective of things as far as product design and research and design goes. But that's my only experience so far with them.
Okay.
The only thing that puzzles me about new optic companies is, look, nobody knows who you are unless you are marketing strictly to the competitive market. You need to get these optics in the hands of people with some credibility, right? And I have friends that work at Swamp Fox in the marketing department, so this is my advice to them. If you want to be a brand taken seriously, you need to start sending product to people that have no interest in your success.
So Jedi, have you been on the We Like Shooting show?
I have, yeah. I got on there because I made fun of them on primary and secondary.
I love it. And I was going to circle back to primary and secondary because I've always had some how do I say this? And you're laughing, so you know exactly what I'm going to say.
No, they're good dudes. They're good dudes. When we were on a podcast or a modcast one time, and it just started going the rabbit hole, and people just started making jokes, and there was no point to them. I'm like, guys, can we bring it back? This is like the We Like Shooting podcast. Everyone's laughing, and nobody's getting better.
I got it.
And then I guess somebody told on me, and then, oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. Sean, the main guy.
Sean.
Yeah. He calls up. He's like, hey, bro, you want to be on the show? I'm like, hell yeah. So it was a good time. They're good dudes.
I'm actually going to Colorado Springs this weekend to visit my really good friend Steve Reyes, and in the process, I'm going to meet up with Sean and the We Like Shooting guys. We're going to go to the range and play around a little bit. So
yeah.
Anyway, Jeremy, I think you had a follow up.
I have so many questions.
And
I want to get back to the class, but it's hard because there's. Why aren't people going with the Trijicon RMR, right? Because I think the price point on that is just under $500. So if you're looking at, Holliston coming in at $300, is it one of those things where, anybody, hey, I only have like $200, should I buy a high point? And everybody's like, no, save another $200 and get a used Glock. Is it that kind of thing with red dots between the Holliston and the Trijicon RMR?
Look, people are always going to go the path of least resistance with cost. Right. And the thing about the RMR that intuitively has working against it is the small window. You can pick any dot on the market and it's got a bigger window, right? Because people kind of don't understand why it's designed that way, the durability with the owl shape, owl ear shaped architecture and things of that nature. And sometimes people just want to be different. God bless them because it drove the rest of the industry, and when you have companies like Hollow Sun and hopefully Vortex saying, hey, man, just as good, half the cost, whether now or soon in the future, it drives the rest of the industry and is only better for consumers and law enforcement agencies alike.
That makes sense. So let's circle back to the RDS pistol class. Jim, what does that class? What did that class look like for you? The first, is it a 1 day or 2 day course?
2 day.
2 day class. So what are some of the things that you guys are talking about and working on day one?
Oh man, I was at one of the original versions. I know the crap.
Or you can talk about. Jim also AIs for me. He was my first real AI for the most part. So
first I'll start it out just with the overview of the dot itself. Install procedure was a thing then because the Type 1 RMR was the Type 2 hadn't come to market yet. And so just best practices as far as install, care of your dot, things that kind of you don't know what you don't know sort of things that if you just took it and slapped it on there and went about your life with it and was never told about, things like, torquing the screws down properly, utilizing blue Loctite, treating your optic for fog, and things like that. How to solve the flicker issue at that given time. Talking about the intensity and MOAs, things like that. Those are just things that you don't just get on your own. You buy a dot, you get a manual, the end. You don't get any of that inside user info that people have found out from trial and error. And it's not a it works for me or it worked for me. It's it works, here's why, across this spectrum of amount of people that I've shown this and amount of people that I know use this. And then I started out with the ever famous now berm drill, utilizing your dot and kind of the intro to dot tracking and seeing how the fundamentals of your shooting, your basic firearm fundamental skills, can be adjusted and corrected to get you in the best position possible to get the fastest, most accurate, and most repeatable shot that you can get by looking at grip, stance, and extension of your arms. And that I think starting a class like that is so unique to the dot. Scott says all the time that it's a shooting class. It's a shooting class. It's at the end of the day, it's a shooting class. But I think as far as being RDS specific goes, that drill I think highlights an immediate advantage to the dot. And without even going on paper yet, people are starting to build confidence in what they're working with and what they're working towards. And they're seeing already corrections in their fundamental firearm skills. And you've shot 30 rounds really fast. And you're like, I want to go put this on paper, man. Let's start seeing what these hits are going to look like. Cause this is pretty good.
Yeah, it addresses the two problems that everybody comes to my classes with is finding the dot quickly on the draw and tracking the dot in recoil, right? Finding the dot in the draw is a multi-part process, but when we go over body mechanics and how much that can influence your shooting, which is highlighted so much more obviously by the dot, that's why we go into that. We do things like, isosceles versus leg forward and that how it affects the dot, the bend of the elbows and how that affects the dot, a higher versus lower grip. And then, ultimately what winds up is that I'll add, and we hot wash it every time we add a physical attribute. I do like a little hot wash, review things like, so what did the dot do? The first time it's like, yep, lost the dot up, or off to 2 o'clock, or I saw unicorns running around with bunny rabbits. Just weird stuff, man. Weird stuff. Yeah, it's 100% true, right?
Really? Bunny rabbits?
Oh, you would be. They don't say that, but you would be amazed at what they, like.
No, I get it.
W's into Z's and O's and whatever, right? And then by the end, when we put everything together, inevitably people just goes, the dot was just wiggling there in the middle and I wasn't doing anything. And I was like, kind of cool, huh? Yep, kind of cool.
I think too, important specific to Scott and Modern Samurai Project is that in that very beginning portion of shooting, a student also gets introduced to how Scott is going to continue to talk about how the body works the way the body works, and efficiencies within the body, because he does certain things to highlight between you and your partner that you're paired up with, because that's the class is structured that you're with a partner throughout the entire class. And so he starts to break things down. And so you have an idea already before you even fired a round of, first off, what this is going to do for you, not only what this is going to do for you, but how it's going to do it. And there's immediate buy-in by just the physical structure of your body highlighted without even shooting around or having a gun in your hand, to kind of get that mental student buy-in right away, and to get people having that idea of, okay, I am gonna try this. This has automatically worked outside of having a gun in my hand there's no reason why it's not going to work when I do put a gun in my hand and then it's confirmed with live fire.
Nice. Love it. I don't want to take it back to gear, but I'm going to. How important is for the new shooter with the red dot, how important is window size and how important is MOA?
If they take my class or if they don't take my class?
They're going to take your class in 6 months.
Then it's not very important. What they'll learn is that if you wind up making your presentation all one thing, window size is not that much of a concern, right? For example, right, the SRO, I think it's a great optic. As Aaron Cowan has said, don't drop it. Don't hop to prone in your duty holster in it. Other than that, it's a very large window. The dot's great. The glass is great, yada, yada, yada. But what I warn people with the SRO as opposed to the RMR is with the RMR, when you present, you're making everything one thing, finishing with pinky pressure to drop the dot down, right? Because as a right-handed shooter, the dot's in two places if you can't find it. It's either high or it's left. Right. The left is because you're not getting your support hand involved quick enough and your right arm is dominating. But for a lot of people, it's high. And if you incorporate the pinky pressure at the end, it drops it down. It doesn't matter the window size. But when you have something like the SRO, which is it fills a need for a lot of people, what they wind up doing is presenting out because they find the dot and it's high, then they drop it down, making them do two things. So if I'm doing one thing and you're doing two things, right, here and then drop it, I'm always going to be more efficient doing one thing, ergo I'm always going to be faster. I would tell you that if you never plan on taking a class or that huge window resonates with you, the SRO is great and get a 5-6 MOA. But I think if you are going to take a class with an experienced red dot instructor, that the benefits of a smaller MOA is apparent across all spectrums of application.
So can we just make it just a statement, really, that the mistakes that you're referring to and the grip position and such is for a right-handed shooter, just so that, what you were talking about as far as your grip goes out, you're referring to right-handed. Because if you're shooting low left as a right-handed shooter, it's just the opposite if you're shooting low right on a left-handed.
Correct. Yeah. So the similarity is both left and right-handed people the dot will either be high, or for left-handed people, it'll be to the right.
It'll be right. Exactly. Yeah. I just wanted to clear that up.
Yep. And the SRO takes care of that problem, but does it make you lazy? I don't know. Actually, I do know, but I'm just trying to be nice.
It doesn't solve the problem. It just allows you to have sloppy presentation and correct it quicker, right?
Correct it slower.
Well, so if I have a bigger window, I can allow myself to have a sloppier presentation, right? And then it'll be quicker to me because I'll have that dot will be in there, right? As opposed to a smaller window, it'll take me longer to find it. But the problem is still there, right? The problem is you're not presenting the handgun the way that you should be to have the most efficient shots on target.
Correct. If you don't know it's either high or it's to the left, yes, it'll take less time to find it in that big window. You won't need to find it in the big window, bro. At the SRO, it's all the way there because it takes care of the whole frontal hemisphere, right? But it's usually always high. And if you learn how to present the gun and the dot to where it's not high, it doesn't matter if you have an RMR or a hollow sun or a delta point, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It makes perfect sense. I think there's a lot of, especially with the introduction of the SRO, I think that created this mystique around the window sizes. There's a big window. Finally, a company is offering a big window. that's what I need, right? And no, that's not necessarily what you need. What you need is some proper training.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a reason why, if you look at all open shooters now, there's a reason why they're moving away from CMORs and going toward, whether it be the Romeo or Delta Point Pros. The Delta Point Pro in open now is the new jam, right? And it's a smaller window than the old CMORs are, right? So,
Jim, what are some of the obstacles that you had going into this class with the red dot?
The speed that I lost. No, I want to reword that. For me, coming from utilizing a weapon system with a dot being a rifle and my ability to have speed and accuracy to a very high degree, and then putting a red dot on my pistol, I became a lot slower. I lost speed that I had with iron sights. And it wasn't for any other reason other than the fact that I wasn't allowing myself to shoot my pistol the same way that I was with iron sights. I had this mental idea that I have a dot on my pistol, and that is the exact same thing as a dot on my rifle. And so for me, the over-confirmation of the dot, and I think somebody giving me permission to go, literally Scott telling me, go, pull the trigger faster, pull the trigger until I finally found that level of comfort that the dot's going to be there. The dot's going to be there. I have an acceptable area of accuracy that I can break that shot. That was the biggest mental hurdle for me. Especially coming from law enforcement shooting where accuracy was it. A timer. What's a timer? It's get your hits in that box. I don't care how long it takes. There wasn't really that marrying of speed and the accuracy. It was you're accountable for every round. You're accountable for every round. You're accountable, and that's it. Or you're going to prison. Like oh, you missed, you're going to fucking jail. Like even on a flat range, like enjoy prison.
Try fire, you miss, you're done.
Right. Exactly. So then I put a dot on there, and then I'm like, oh man, I need rifle level accuracy with this. And I just lost a lot of speed. That once I was given that permission by somebody that I don't think I would have got by myself. I honestly don't think that I would have ever gotten there because I wasn't ever going to give myself permission or that confidence to do it.
Yep. That makes sense. So on that, how does your time and your efficiency compare with the red dot now to where you were at with irons before putting the red dot on your gun?
Oh, I'm faster. There's no doubt. There's no doubt about that.
And more accurate.
And more accurate. Yeah, faster and more accurate for sure. Yep.
Awesome. So Scott, when Jim was talking about giving himself permission to pull the trigger, fire the shot when he could, right, and then overcompensating for finding the dot, how do you think that's a common error for students, and then how do you train that? How do you get students to overcome that?
Well, that's the next part of the class, my friend. So I do the 3 and 2 drill. The 3 and 2 drill is I have the center mass target, whether it be an 8-inch circle and a 3x5 in the head box, right? And we go over the different gross types of sight picture. The way I explain it is I'll ask somebody, hey, who's new to dots, who shoots irons? And somebody will raise their hand and I'll say, okay, so at 3 yards and an 8-inch circle, what kind of sight package are you looking for acceptable hits with irons? And inevitably they'll go flash front sight picture. And I'll go, really, bro? Are you really? And they'll go,
no.
I thought that was the right answer. No. I go, what are you really doing? You're putting the gun in the middle of the circle and you're pulling the trigger. And then, then I say that, well, now you've gone out and you've got your vein-laden Cryptek Cerakote and your gold barrel and your your trigger that's so flat it's actually convex now, and your red dot. And now, unless the dot's in the center of the center of the center, smiling back at you and telling you you're a good person, you're not pulling the trigger. Stop that, right? let's go over different indexes. Start looking at the red dot as a system, which includes the gun, the glass, the mount, the shroud, and the dot, right? And let's see what good work we can do at 3 yards. And then we go to get that done. They figure out which index they like the best. And then we immediately transition from going from a gross sight picture up to the 3x5, finding the dot. So immediately gross to refined. And it's made to mimic the modulation of proper sight picture, right? Using the appropriate amount of information to make an appropriately accurate shot at the speed and distance required. The aided circle replicates something that needs to be shot at 3 yards. The 3x5 replicates something that needs to be shot at 15 yards, right? And for that, you need to find the dot. People see how quickly they can get good shots on target at close distance and how quickly they can transfer to an accurate shot using the dot immediately. And then they get over what I call the panic, red dot panic syndrome, which is, oh crap, oh my God, where's the dot? Oh crap, oh my God, where's the dot? And I'm like, bro, you haven't even taken the gun out of the holster yet. Relax.
So I think that begs the question, though, Jedi. I mean, do you train your students to fall back to the irons? I mean, if
nobody's using irons in any of that,
right? But what I'm saying is that what you're saying is you have to put the shot in the box,
in the circle, yeah,
in the circle, yeah. And then what if the battery dies? The RMR or the red dot gets crushed, or what? I mean, do you train people to go back to irons?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
No, not that. So here's the thing. I always believe you should have backup irons on your gun, right? But when you're teaching your kid to drive your automatic car, do you teach them how to default to a manual to fix the problem?
No,
because that would be silly. You just tell them to fix the flat tire, and irons are fixing the flat tire.
Okay, so you're reverting back to irons, going from your...
Depending on the speed and distance required.
Okay.
Right? So if you're at 3 to 5 yards, use a gross index.
Right, it's a point and shoot.
No. Can we just stop saying point shooting? It's a ridiculous term. If you see the target and the gun, you're aiming.
Okay.
Right?
I like it.
Point shooting is you see the target, you don't see the gun, and you're praying to St. Michael to land the rounds where they need to go. If you see the target and the gun, you are still aiming, but you're just using a gross sight picture.
Jeremy, your thoughts on concealed carry and what you do?
So with red, I want to briefly talk about the catastrophic failures. I think people are overly concerned about the battery dying in the dot. I know when the SRO came out, there were people talking about, if officers become in an entanglement and then the optic fails or gets crushed or whatever. And I think a lot of people overlook the fact, that specifically, if you have a ground fight with the officer and his optic is crushed, he doesn't need the optic to put the guy down that's on top of him. Right?
High pictorial index, go to work.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of misconception and exaggerated worry with red dots failing or batteries dying and then not be. And we see with everything else, it's like, well, how are we going to be able to do this, that, or the other? I think if you're training enough if you have the mental wherewithal where you're actually thinking through that problem, you can probably get to the conclusion that it's not as big of a deal as people are making it out to be.
Or just give me the anecdotal evidence to that.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think what I'm here. Go ahead, Gay.
I'm just going to go. Let's go right now to active self-protection and show me the video. Show me the video of the gunfight with the pistol in the rain. John
Correa.
Active self-protection.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. It's just like with people are talking about reloads and, there was a comment in here. We had a comment from a Facebook user. I just don't understand not carrying a reload over 20 years, and I'm not going to stop now. If you can carry a reload, it's great. I carry a backup mag in my pocket, but I also understand that I'm probably never going to need it. And I think active self-protection has seen maybe one recently where a reload was done, but it was an administrative reload that had zero effect on the outcome.
Yep. Agree.
It's not an issue. And
it's
I think
probable to carry a tourniquet, but it is a reload.
Yeah. And it's like, I think people are making mountains out of molehills just for internet drama and whatnot. And I think we especially saw that with the SRO and the durability tests, some of the Shield RMSC durability tests. Scott, I'll default to your expertise on that. That's currently what I have on my 48, but I'm probably going to switch to the RMR after our conversation. And then with the Acro, I know everybody's given it hell because of the battery life. And it's like, well, you should know your equipment. If you're going to rely on, when your car is going to run out of gas, you fill it up with gas. If you're running a red dot that has a 6-month battery in it, change your batteries at 4 months.
Or less than that, but just deal with it.
Yeah. Solve the problem that you think you have.
If the feature set resonates with you, then you need to deal with all its shortcomings.
Yeah.
But understand why that feature set resonates with you. That's all I'm saying. And don't take my word for it. Hey, all you Shield RMS owners, don't take my word for it. Go ahead and take it right now and rack it off a hard table.
Well, I have it. And that's I'm like, shit, man, why am I not?
Unless you're going to go to your RMR right now, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't intend to. I also understand that I'm probably not going to need to do that. But again, then we default to the argument, well, it's just like using your sights, like people, we have the caveat that, in defensive accuracy, a flash sight picture will do, right? You don't need to have a refined sight picture. And it's like, well, if you don't ever train to use your sights and you have to use them, you're going to be shit out of luck, right? So back to the RMSC, if I ever have to, rack my slide off of whatever it is, then I'm going to be shit out of luck. And I'd rather not do that. There really isn't a reason.
Context for use is important for each individual to look at it and to make a determination for what they're going to do. It's very well put out there that I'm not overly pleased with the Acro battery. However, I deal with agency level recommendations, agency level policy things, firearms instructors for agencies. And as far as an agency approved list, this might be a surprise to some people, but there are some officers in some agencies that probably shouldn't have a gun at all, let alone the responsibility to surprise America. Let alone have to have a battery change at an undetermined period of time. That said, if you're a locked on dude who has a personally owned weapon, who is spending his money on an optic, you're probably locked on enough to change your battery on your own. What is your context of use? What is what you intend to implement this firearm for? And at the end of the day, what's your jam and what suits your needs best, but based on reliable and accurate information, not just it works for me.
Right, 100%.
You have to be able to do everything that you can do with iron sights with your optics level gun, or you shouldn't be carrying to defend your life or the life of your family's. Hard stop.
Yeah. Plus, here's the other thing, and I'll take Jim's poll too. I mean, I already know the answer to this, right? In teaching,
you better
2.5 years, catastrophic. The dot is just dead. We're not talking battery. We're not talking installation error. That thing just had a catastrophic. It's done. 4, maybe 4. I'm probably pushing it, but I'm going to say 4. The number of front sights I've had fall off in my class, well over 20, almost 30.
Yeah.
It's like if I don't have one fall off in a class, it's almost like a point on my POI.
Yeah.
Right? Check the front sights. know.
I've had my own fall off, 3 or 4 times. Let alone students. Students come back and like, hey, my gun's not shooting right. And I'm like, there's something missing here.
All right. Check your kit.
I get what you're saying.
Check your kit, but to get back to your questions, yes, I don't teach it in my class.
Okay.
Because I just think it's Captain August being obvious. I say put backup irons on your gun. They're not that expensive. Your gun's already milled for them. Empty spaces on guns drive me absolutely bonkers, right? But if everything is set up correctly, take a couple of dry fire, shut your dot off, and just shoot irons a couple of times. You need to know where your irons impact. It won't be the same as your dot, and what your holdovers and unders are at certain distances. And here's a crazy thing: zero your irons. Right. So
why would you do that? They do that at the factory.
Exactly.
Yeah, they do a bunch of stuff there.
They don't clean guns, though, do they, Jeremy?
You know what?
They don't clean guns there, do they?
Unfortunately not. Neither do I. I actually am taking a class this weekend, and I'm thinking about cleaning the 48. But what's a minimum? What's a minimum skill set somebody should have to take the RDS pistol course?
4 safety rules. I used to put in that you should be able to clear dot torture at 3 yards. Man, I'm amazed at how many people can't do that. Right? Where I get emails, hey man, I can get a 48. And I'm like, yeah, come on. Right? As long as you're safe, you don't come to a class with a janky holster. Talking to you, Mr. Serpa. And you know the 4 basic safety rules, and can take instruction well. Come on out. Come on out.
What are you? What's one of your goals that you have for your students, or an overreaching goal that you have for your students after graduating that course?
So I let them dictate the goal. Right at the beginning of the class, when I go over the safety and I go over who I am or who I'm not, and a basic overview of that, I ask them, like, look, I say, you're going to learn a lot of things in the next 2 days, but if there was one thing you wanted to learn, what would that one thing be? Right. It's usually find the dot on the draw, keep the dot in recoil. Sometimes it's transition. Sometimes it's, I don't know, my department sent me here. I think this is all crap. Right. And I'm there to give them the information. Right. Look, I don't get paid by a red dot company. I just think it's an incredible force multiplier, and it gets us back to seeing the way we were meant to see, right? Target, threat, one focal plane focus. If I give you a body of information and it doesn't resonate with you, a couple of things there, right? Number 1, you're a physical moron, right? Number 2, you already had your mind made up and there was nothing I could have said, right, to change it. Or 3, I'm going to make you better in 2 days than you've ever gotten better with iron sights. And that's cool.
I like it. I like it a lot.
What's the round count for the RDS pistol course?
I say 1,000. It's between 800 to 900, but I say 1,000 for a nice even number because, ammo companies ship it out in that.
Yeah. So, Jim, I have a question for you. If you're a guy that's listening, or a gal, or Keneal, she just jumped up. If you're someone listening to this podcast, where does this class fall in the continuum of the average everyday out there shooter? Where should they start thinking about taking this class?
Right now.
And can you tell me more?
I think one of the biggest things is that people just aren't training at all.
True.
Honestly, I think that people get comfortable in their skill set. And I think that they're just going to go and shoot some rounds and maybe confirm what they know, and not really truly realize the value of a formalized class. Also, the thing about Jedi's class is that it's a shooting class. You're going to become a better shooter. Hard stop.
Okay.
That's all there is to it. The proof is in the results. And that sounds like a sales pitch because Scott's already said that I'm one of his AIs. But one of my favorite parts about being his AI is watching people's faces as they confirm the things that were just told to them and they see the results of it. the knuckle, the fist pumps, the high fives, the look of, I can't believe that I just accomplished that. Or in the berm drill, my favorite part of the 2-day class by far. And it is, and Scott's laughing because I say it every class. I go, this is my favorite part, as I watch people go, oh, and they haven't even put rounds on paper yet. So even if you're like, hey, the dot's not my jam, because I don't know why anybody would think that, but you're still going to walk away a better shooter.
Yeah.
You're going to walk away better understanding how you should be shooting, because it's not the way, it's a way designed and tailored for you in a large group class.
Hang on. It's not the way.
It's a way.
It's a way. Yeah. That is genius.
Yeah. So what I say in the class is, look, guys.
Yeah, Scott says that.
I go, this is a way, not the way. Take what you want, and after the class, throw the rest away. But if you throw it away, do it based on a metric, and your feelings are not metrics. Okay?
Right.
If I get you to do something a second faster and more accurate than you've ever done it, but I feel comfortable, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Okay.
Is it value added?
Yeah, 100%.
If it is, then that's the end.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no opinion on it.
Right.
It is the way it is. If the dot didn't move at all, then that's it. That's the end of the story. Actually, no, that's the start of a new story where we then go to paper and you just 10x it all day long. And I think that's the biggest thing is that you're going to walk away understanding you're shooting to a better level than you were before in a group class.
Yeah. And I pretty much commit and promise and guarantee that everybody in some way, somehow, they will get better. Otherwise, I won't leave the range. They will get better somehow, some way, right? It's not 10,000 rounds slowly and smoothly after you leave the class. I will show you mechanical advantages right now, and you'll get better right now. Not slowly, not smoothly, none of that shit. Oh, sorry, I did swear. Sorry, got fired.
That's all right.
Right?
Floodgates have opened.
Yeah.
You'll get better now. So,
is there somebody that shouldn't put a red dot on their gun?
Blind people.
Yeah.
How about somebody that should not put a red dot on the gun?
Yeah,
That's what he just asked. Yeah. People who can't hear.
Still blind people.
Hey, we had a legally blind guy pass the New Mexico qualification sheet.
Hey, no, I'm not saying the blind people can't shoot. I'm just saying no benefit on the red dot.
No benefit on the red dot.
Yeah.
Okay. Other than that, so if you're watching this podcast, you could probably benefit from putting a red dot on your gun.
I think red dots on guns. I think if you are using it as a means to just simply get better with no other investment in your shooting skills, don't waste your time. Don't waste your money because you're attempting to use a piece of equipment to buy skill, and you're not going to. As a matter of fact, you may take a step back in your shooting skills, and then either settle into that or just shit can it all together. The biggest thing, if people are going to put it down on the gun, we referenced earlier, should you not shoot at all? Should you wait 6 months? Blah, blah. My big thing is that don't abandon it. Seek formal training. That's when you're really going to unlock the benefits of it, the small idiosyncrasies of it, in Scott's class, the difficulties that you have in it, what you're trying to learn. Because one of the things that you're going to say at the beginning of class, like Scott said, you set your own goal. And we've never seen a goal that wasn't met or addressed because all the issues are pretty much the same. So don't abandon it. Just get training. If you're not going to get training and you're a sloppy shooter to begin with and you're on the gram and you see people shooting good with red dots, don't waste your time.
So I should send my red dot back.
It's America. Do what you want.
Yeah. Go for America. Do what you want. Buy it. Buy it from me if I'm selling one.
Sure.
What Man, I had a question that I wanted to get to. It'll probably come back to me, but I want to talk to Scott. If somebody's not able to get out to one of your classes, you do online training. Talk to us a little bit about that and what some benefits of that are.
Yeah. So what everybody wants to learn when they do my virtuals, right? I do it over Skype. It's an hour. It's just a draw. Right. It's things you can do in dry fire. I mean, I guess the most extensive one I did with a guy who was a 3-gun guy, and he just wanted to get into gaming. And look, guys, I am not, I'm a masterclass USPSA shooter. I've never won a major or anything like that. I do very, very well in my local competitions. But the crux of what people need, I can give them with competition, I think, or at least I can tell them to go talk to Tim Herron, right? But generally, it's the draw because, the draw is a shit show for everybody. And there are about 5 things that everybody does that they don't need to do. Everyone thinks I'm a genius, or I'm like, stop doing that. And here's how you stop doing that, right? And inevitably, I'll have people take my class and in dry fire, I'll go, what's your draw right now? They're like, oh, it's horrendous. It's like 2 seconds, right? And by the end of class, I'll have them down to a 0.9. And they're doing less work to do it, right? If you're going after a specific drill, say the fast coin or something like that, we go over the fast drill and reloads and things of that nature. Generally, anything you want to do with the draw or finding the dot on draw, in transition, stuff like that. Anything you can really do in dry fire, I can pretty much do, but 99% of everything is just the draw.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, Tim Herron's a good guy. I took his one-day practical performance course earlier this year, and he helped me with. He's
the best of all tiny humans.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He just moved here, so he's not too far. And
I know.
Andy, I think is taking like 3 or 4 hours of private training with him.
Good for him, dude.
So I'm out there stalking the range like every other day, looking for those guys, just to pop in on them. But yeah, he's a good guy. He's definitely somebody that is spoken highly of you. And if I had a doubt with taking one of your classes, he would have eliminated that. But I don't think I've heard or read anything other than just a miracle worker that you are with red dots and folks that are getting into them.
Well, I appreciate that, especially since Tim has been a huge influence on me. It's funny. You're going to go onto a podcast, you're going to get interviewed, and some of the questions are always like, who are your influences? And I'm like, not that guy. I don't like that guy. Not that guy. I don't like that guy. And it kept on getting back to Tim. It kept on getting back to Tim because Tim and I have known each other now 2015, 2016, right? And more so than competition, he has taught me how to look at things and break them down, and taking that and applying it to, my jiu-jitsu background and my professor in jiu-jitsu and how he broke down problems and techniques and adding the two together. And then having incredible resources like, my buddy Jim and my buddy AJ Zio to bounce stuff off of, because sometimes I can go off the deep end thinking about stuff, right? Going down that rabbit hole. And I'm like, does that make sense? And they'll go, oh, dude, that's awesome. Or they'll go, nope. No, sir. You need to keep that to yourself.
Yeah, I've been there. A time or two. What advice do you guys have for somebody that's signing up for this class and wants to take it?
Jim, I'll let you take that, bro.
Come in with an open mind. I think one of the things that you have to be ready to embrace what you see. And it's not embrace what you're told. It's embrace what you make happen. Because in this class, it's a very concerted effort to make you replicate the things that you're shown, to see if there's value added or not, to get you at that premier point where you're going to get the best results. But you got to kind of open up a little bit in order to do that. and understand that you may be pushed to that other end of the perfection race. And then we just bring it back a little bit, and we find that middle ground, and then understand that that's now how you need to be for forever, or until you reintroduce that again a couple weeks later, and find even that little bit less movement again until you continue to build on those things. And then once you find that, especially in the berm drill, because that builds the rest of the 2 days. I think I can't stress the importance of that enough, because it sets up your ability to succeed and to build on that throughout the day and 3 quarters that remains on that. So lock in, focus in on that, and you're really going to unlock the potential that you can walk away with, because it really is. It's a change in how you're going to shoot, that if you embrace, you're going to see results, but you have to open your mind up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's an exercise in seeing what little changes in your body mechanics, how much more production or benefit you can get with doing half the work, and how also that introspection in your own practice can lead to benefit. And it does. It lays the groundwork for everything, and it gets people out of the classic target at 7 yards, speed and accuracy at the same time, otherwise it doesn't matter type of mentality. That's good, Jim. That's good stuff, bro.
I did good.
Yeah. What's a common challenge your students have coming into this class? What's if there's one thing that you see in class, we're going to address this 2 or 3 times, or we're going to address it one time and it's going to benefit 4 or 5 students. What's one challenge that you typically see?
With the execution, or are you talking about like mental stuff?
Either or. Is it more mental?
No, it's both. I'll cover the mental stuff first, and we'll get Jim's take on it first. The most frustrating thing about students when they come to the class is they don't expect to get better. They expect to take what I give them, touch the magic, whatever the hell that means, and then maybe they figure something out after the class and they get just an increment better. If I could just get that one thing, $600, $400, or $500 is good. No, bro. You're going to get better now, and you need to understand you're going to get better now. That's the mental aspect, right? The physical aspect is people just do too much stuff because they think, the version of tactical of isosceles and bent over and shoulders and ears and eyes creeping out the top, right? Regardless of what you say, people may say, oh, that guy used to be cool, but now he's not cool. But you don't know why he's not cool anymore, right? You got to know why that guy's not cool. So we go over the common mistakes people make when they're drawing and recoil. I have funny little names for them. Like, I'll give you an example. The FPS push, right? It's the feet per second push, because people think when they're drawing, if they lean forward, they are increasing the feet per second of their round, when in fact they are not. And they're moving their eye line, right? Because the red dot goes where you're looking. And if you all of a sudden change where you're looking by moving forward, no wonder you can't find the dot. So there's about a host of 5 or 6. I go over it in my class, in my instructor class. It's actually written out, and I talk about my POI and where it is in the POI for that. That's really the change. People can't understand, especially alphas, right? Gun people are generally alphas, or they wish to be alphas. And alphas think if a little work is good, a lot of work must be great. And the exact opposite is true. Speed is the economy of motion, right? Speed comes from efficiency. Efficiency comes from technique, not from doing useless frenetic motion.
That makes sense. Is that what you typically see as well, Jim?
I think for me, the biggest thing is giving yourself permission to miss. And I think it's a two-part answer, and then also understanding the value of that miss. There's this idea that I can't miss. And then there's also the other end of that where it's I missed, and that's the answer when that's not the answer, because a miss has value. And so there's that fear to push things to that point to where you get that miss, to identify why and make that correction. And then there's also a lack of understanding or a lack of, I don't know. I think it may just be end knowledge that it's not just a miss. It's, I didn't have enough support hand. It's, I field the gun too much. It's, my dot was low and I didn't have it yet. And I broke that trigger too soon. And so I think that there's, for the biggest thing that I've seen, Ellie, is the idea that you can miss and that's okay, because we're on the range and we need to push our skill set so that we can identify those things, and so that you can identify those things. I don't let people tell me that they missed. I don't allow it in my classes. I say it right away in the beginning. If you miss and I say, "What's that?" and you say miss, we have a problem. You need to tell me what it was. And start to identify what it was, because all of those rounds have value. At the same time, I give them literal permission to miss. I then revoke that permission at the end of class, or when they go back out, to their jobs where there's consequences. But you can't find that balance without having that permission to go. And I think that that's something too that people need to give themselves on the inside as well. That I'm checking into the range right now, and so now it's time. It's time to go. It's time to find my deficiencies, identify them, and categorize them in order to get better.
Yeah. I'll give you an interesting story, right? So I have a friend, he's a cop here in Northern Virginia, and good dude, serviceable shooter, right? And he was asking me questions. He's also a jiu-jitsu guy, right? And he had heard me talk about what a lot of competitors say, separating speed and accuracy in practice. And he's like, dude, I just don't believe in that, man. It's got to be speed and accuracy all the time. And I'm like, okay, Bob, when you roll, do you never tap? It's like, no, tap early, tap often. It's by failing is how you learn. What? Bro. And he looked at me and he went, damn you, Jedi. Have a nice day.
The same. Where are you starting to see more students having the ability or developing the ability to track their sights and actually not call the misses, but hey, it's not a miss. This is what I did. Or is that something that I guess the students aren't bringing with them to class just yet?
Go ahead, Jim. You seem to track that question better than I did. So.
I don't on the law enforcement end of things. I'm primarily law enforcement. I teach occasional open enrollment classes, but for me, I'm primarily law enforcement. It's a skill that's not taught at all, unless they train from the outside. There's nothing. I get told I missed. And I think that there's a large lack of understanding of what those things mean until they're told. And then I think as soon as they're told, halfway through class, I'm getting good solid answers, but that's also coupled with the instruction of how to read your dot. And so the class builds on itself. The same thing with, the importance of that berm drill is that it allows you then to call those shots and have a better understanding of why that was and be able to make that fundamental correction even within a string of fire. I mean, when you get into a 10 and 10 and 10, there's enough time in there that if you understand what you're doing, that you can make a fundamental correction in your shooting to correct those shots. But you have to know what it is. It's not just, I need to shoot more better or more center. And it's not something that I'm seeing people coming in with. Unless they've been one of Jedi students, and then they have an understanding of it. But again, I think that's one of those that you're never just going to kind of pick up on your own. If you don't get out and train with somebody and have that identified for you, where are you ever going to get that from?
Yeah. For me, it happened. So I took a class, and it was a shooting drill class, supervised shooting drills. And we started off with a very simple diagnostic drill. One of the AIs was like, I can't teach you anything. And I was like, well, that's crap. I'm, I paid good money to come here and learn some stuff.
RSO. It's not an AI, it's an RSO.
But one of the things that, and it's one of the things that we've started telling our students is if you could, because it's inevitably going to happen, right? Somebody's going to sign up for a class. It's going to be supervised drills. And then in order for them to benefit from that, they're going to have to do some self-diagnosis and be able to call those shots. And it's one of the main reasons that I wanted to take Tim's class is because I've heard several of his students talk about the shot calling drill that he does. Because I'm able to do it a little bit sometimes if I'm really, really focusing on my front sight. But I think it's, me personally, I think it's a skill that should be taught and should be trained earlier because everybody gets into the concealed carry instructor game to get rich quick. And then when that doesn't pay the bills, now they're starting to offer defensive handgun classes and all this other stuff that is outside of their lane. So we're going to have these students. Yeah. Right. It's the student that wants more than the concealed carry course, right? That is so close to getting the bug, right? And then they're going to end up in a class and it's like, well, I could have did this at my local indoor range with a buddy of mine calling out these drills.
Yeah. Watching YouTube.
Yeah.
I have a whole rant on the days of supervised drills need to go away. Yeah. The days of, I was the best shooter in class and the instructor never talked to me. Those need to go away.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to happen for a while. I think that more, and the students that I think that end up in Scott's class and the motivated LE students that end up in your class, Jim, I think they probably are in tune to that, and that when they get it, they're like, that's a very good point.
I think they leave more motivated. Also, is one of the biggest things is that I think the excitement, especially in the LE world, taking baseline shooters or agency shooters, because they may not choose to come to my class. Their agency may be converting. They want the state credit for it, so they come to my class. And then all of a sudden they open up this whole new chapter that I look at the reviews and they're like, I now have the ability to fix a bunch of issues myself as I see it. And so just the buy-in in shooting in general, when you come up to somebody and say, hey, what happened? And they're like, this. Cool, man. Make the correction on the next one. All right. And then they do.
Yeah. I'll give you a classic example, right? Especially what I have seen, right, in my LE only classes is late support hand implementation, right? They'll do.
I was a product of this. Go ahead, Scott. Yes.
To where people will do the ALS boogie and their support hand will be down here. And then I go, hey, dude, while you're doing that whole thing, trying to get the gun out, what is the detriment of having your support hand up here waiting to receive the gun? And they'll look at me and they're like, there's no problem with that whatsoever. And I go, why don't you try that? Because that last one you shot was gorgeous, dude. You got it all the way out, but support hand got on there late. Your right hand already dominated. And because of the way the body works like an X, your right arm unabated by your support hand went to the left when you're trying to pick up speed. So this is a new one, Jim. I don't know if you've seen that. I have guys just stand right here with their support hand. Now go fast. Bam, right in the middle of the A zone. And they're like, oh, well, that's cool. Can I just keep my hand here up the whole time? If you go on duty like that, knock yourself out. But I'm going to guess not, right? So just take that and move both hands at the same time on the stimulus, which is either an up call or the beep, right? And then they get it, and they're like, oh. And then I remind them there is a reason for every success and every failure. Your job is to know the answer for both. And that's how you get better. And that's how hopefully I make people better in my class, because they start hunting for that reason. And that hunting for the reason is the path so that they can get better on their own.
My thing was low left, and anybody with, it's too much trigger finger or this, that, or the other. but that's not what it was. Is I wasn't lining my sights up when I pressed the trigger on I had a janky draw. Yeah. So when I presented, I was pressing the shot off before my front sight, before I should have.
So let's think about it like this way though, right? How much you weigh, bro?
290.
Okay. So you're a big boy like me, right? If I said, hey man, for $1,000, you and I are going to arm wrestle, winner takes all, right? Would you take that bet? Depending if you had $1,000 or not, whether or not I did some jujitsu on you or something like that, right? But then if I said, hey man, you get to use your whole hand and I'm going to just use one finger, that would be, you would like, yeah, might as well just give me the money now, right? So you're telling me your trigger finger overpowered your entire support hand?
Yeah. It wasn't then I had a super light trigger on there. So I was like, it's not my trigger finger. It's not my trigger press. There's no, like, I'm not a terrible shooter. But then when I finally broke it down, I was like, all right, let me figure this out. I'm shooting. My sights aren't lined up. I'm not giving myself the extra 0.2 of a second that I needed. And the only reason I needed that is because my presentation was janky.
But it was still flat. It was low too though, right? It was low.
It was so my presentation was kind of here and it kind of made this arcing motion. So that's what it was. So when I was, but if you look at that and you're taking a class where it's just supervised shooting drills, it's too much trigger finger or this, that, or the other.
Sure, because with that, you're checking the box for today to get through that drill. You're not checking the box for tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that, because you're just simply getting through the mechanics of what this is in order to move on to the next thing, to the next drill. And I think that's the difference of things. That's the difference between training and checking boxes. I mean, you see the law enforcement all the time, and coaching versus just flat out instructing. I mean, I look at it as, I would prefer to be called a shooting coach than an instructor. I can instruct all I want, and I had plenty of instructors that here's the material. It is what it is. Go. You either get it or you don't. I check my box, and the investment ends at that. As opposed to the coach needs the results, not just, all right, I put it out there, take and do with it what you will. I need that end result, and I'm going to work with that and address that and fine tune those little things and the little idiosyncrasies and those things until we get the result that we need, not for just today, right now, to end this block of instruction, but for success tomorrow and forevermore.
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine going to a martial arts class and the guy goes, all right, man, I fought in the biggest tournaments in the world. We're going to do this. Ready? 10 kicks to the face. Go. 10 punches to the face. Go. And you do that for 2 days?
You've been instructed.
You've been instructed. And what is the difference from that in most firearms classes?
And then on Wednesday, you have to fight a guy. And you should win because you just spent $600 on 2 days of instruction.
Yeah.
And then the instructor tells you, hey, man, it takes 10,000 reps slowly and smoothly in the corner to get better. So you're not doing that here. But then you got to shoot my standard.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense. Do you have a shooting standard for the end of that class?
I do. So it's my black belt patch standards. If people know me, they know I'm a jiu-jitsu guy, lifelong martial artist, yada, yada. So I just kind of, made. So here's what I always hated, right? You go through a 2-day class, then you shoot the instructor standards, and they have nothing to do with what you just went through in the last 2 days, right? So you're studying geography, and here's a math test. 0 sense, right? So the class is centered around body mechanics, vision, and implementing that into my standards, right? So the first standards is a 3 and 2 at 3 yards, three shots to an alpha, transitioning immediately to 2 rounds in a 3x5 card. The standard for the patch is 2 seconds from the draw, right? Then we go back to 7 yards, and then it's 1 shot to the center mass alpha. That's 1 second. Bill drill was 6 rounds to the center alpha in 2 seconds. And then we go back to the 25-yard line and a 1-shot draw to the center alpha in 1.5 seconds.
That's impressive. I'd like, as a student, I want to take a class where there is some kind of exit standard drill, right? For me, as somebody that teaches, instructs, coaches, whatever, I think that holds your feet to the fire, right? Because the easiest thing, Andy teaches with me. We have a couple other instructors that teach with us. One of the first things I tell them is it's the easiest thing for us is to get a great review from a student, especially with the level of student that we're teaching. This is the only formals training that they have right now, right? But I think that it gets extended through the firearms training industry because it's not, it's fun, right? It's 2 days of fun. You're out there, you're shooting. If you like shooting, you're going to enjoy yourself. You're going to get a little bit better. But I think it's a cop out if the instructor doesn't necessarily, not necessarily cop out, but I think having a set of standards, like a standard drill that you run, hold your feet to the fire, right? It says if you should be able to do this or close to it, if I did my job right. Right. It's your job as the instructor and as the coach to make your student perform at the level that they need to perform at for what they're doing.
So the cool thing, though, too, about the black belt standards are that if you go to modernsamuraiproject.com and look at the standards, is that it's not just you didn't meet black belt, you're done. Scott breaks down different belt levels kind of based off jiu-jitsu. And so there's different tiers within that that you can strive towards. And so you look at it, you're like, I'm at the blue belt in this, and I'm right on the edge of I guess, leveling up in that belt in the quest to the black belt. And so it's a building pattern that you can go back to and revisit and kind of look at where you sit. And so it's not just like, didn't meet my standards. See you later. It's you can revisit it and go back and
they're based off of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu belts, right? The blue belt is based on national standards. Okay, so the 3 and 2, which I adapted from Steve Fisher and his because he does a 3 and 2 as well. His is 3 seconds in his class, so that's the national standard. Right. The one shot at 7, the Tueler standard is 1.5. Right. So we take 1.5. The Bill drill, when Bill Wilson created it, he said from a concealed or duty rig, people should be able to do it at a high level at 3 seconds. So it's 3 seconds. The 1.5 at 25 yards, the class standard is 2 seconds. Why? I made that shit up. No one else is doing whiskey. Yeah.
Why are the other times where they are?
Yeah.
Because of the whiskey I had.
Oh, what was that? What were we drinking that night?
I believe it was Woodford.
It was Woodford.
Because it was my house, and Woodford is prevalent in my house.
Yeah. So what we basically did, right, is we started off at the 1.5, which is, so if mortals at 7 yards with irons, if their thing is 1.5 at 7 yards, we're going to go almost 4 times the distance with a dot and keep the same numbers. So the black belt patch is 1.5, and then the gradation just up from there, 1.75, 2 seconds, yada, yada. So that was, and that I didn't forget about that. That was an epic night. Well, we just had 300th person that said, "Hey man, where are you going to come up with some standards?" And I said, "Fine, Jim, get on it." And we got on it. So.
Nice. We had somebody else earlier commented, said he needs to get you on the Law Dog Shooting Sports podcast soon, since you have such deep roots in
Oklahoma City. Yeah. So unbeknownst to me, right, the 23andMe test has not come back yet, but I am part Shawnee Indian.
Nice.
At least that's what everybody in Oklahoma thinks, right? Because my nickname there is Big Chief. Right. We were sitting in a restaurant in a small town just outside Oklahoma City, actually outside of Tulsa, and people just kept on going back saying, "How you doing?" I was like, "I'm fine, thank you." And they were like shocked. And they kept on asking me. So I go to my buddy Nate. I go, "What the hell's going on?" He's like, "Oh, they think you're native, bro." And then you respond back with those beautiful teeth and the King's English, and they don't know what to do.
Oh, shit.
That was my funnest class phone call to receive. Like, boy, everybody here thinks I'm a giant Indian.
Yeah.
You're a Polish Korean. Like, what?
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Hey, really,
and then the last time I was out there, I was out there for like 6 days. I did a long private lesson with a guy, did a 2-day LE only instructor class, and then a 3-day open enrollment. So one of the guys takes me to this cool little cafe joint that he digs for lunch, and the waitress is Korean, right? And he goes, "Hey, what do you think of my friend, the Big Chief?" And she goes, "Oh, are you like Shawnee or something?" I go, "No, I'm half Korean." She's like, "Oh, I would have never guessed." You people are cray.
Oh, shit. Nice. I don't have that problem, fortunately. I got my 23andMe back, and it was like, you're 100% white. All your ancestors were bad people. So I didn't say that exactly, but it was.
Well, do I see a little ginger in there? You got a little
a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's the evil part.
Yeah,
that's the evil part.
Yeah, that's only like 12% evil, depending on who you ask. Which one of my kids you ask on which day?
Dark soul.
Yeah. Well, it makes life easier if you don't have to worry about other people's feelings.
Yeah, that's the other problem people have, man. They get their gun out of their holster so gingerly.
I do everything gingerly.
Nice.
Every time.
I say that to you.
We say it every time.
I said that in class to him once. Right? I go, for example, Jim has a problem. He gets the gun out gingerly. And everybody pauses and we're like,
what do you mean?
You really say that?
And I do everything gingerly, and then everybody laughs. And
it's not a protected class, so you're good.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for the gingers, it's not a protected class. Beautiful. Hey, I want to give you guys the rest of your night back. There's a ton more gear questions that I have with Red Dot, so we might have to get you guys back on for that. Any parting advice for the listeners that we have on?
I'll go first, Scott. Train. Get out and train. I think one of the things, especially as a police officer, that I see is that there's a lot of good shooters. There really are. Your law enforcement officers who are out there are good shooters, but there's a lot of guys who could be great shooters with just a little bit of work, who aren't just settle for the status quo that they're given from their agency or their agency trainers. And that's not a knock on agency trainers, not at all. There are a lot of my closest friends, my circle of trust, who I say, "Hey, is this shit dumb or is this good?" Our agency trainers, but I think there's a lot of just line level guys and gals who could be great shooters if they just stepped out of their comfort zone, stop worrying about looking like the police, and going out and having a good time learning and breaking that circle of influence that they have. That to me, that's the biggest thing, is that stepping outside your circle of influence into a new realm. For me, that was a big thing for me. I stepped into a caliber of guys that instead of being at the top, I was in the basement and was kind of like, do I even belong in this building? And because of that, I got better. I'm not at the top. I'm probably never going to be at the top. I'm very comfortably in the basement because I'd rather be in the basement with those people than at the top of the other people and settled in. And just kind of my status quo. I think that's the biggest thing, that if you're at the top of your circle, don't abandon those old people. They're still some of my closest friends, but you need to find another circle of influence for you to look at and to look up to, so that you can get better yourself.
Yep. Which is another different, interesting thing, man. The Red Dot is starting to change the way LE trains, because you can't get away with the janky draw with the dot. They're seeing the benefits of threat focused shooting, when focal plane shooting for the SWAT guys under night vision, yada, yada. And they're starting to seek more training. And through that training, departments are starting to get better. So that whole thing of, cops can't shoot. Hold on, because it's coming. it's coming. You know what I mean? So, and I think that is, I think we're in an amazing time. So what do I want people to do, right? I want you to understand what getting better means. You need to define it. When you pick your instructor, if you want to have a good time, if you want to touch the magic, fine. But if you want to get better, why do you think that instructor is going to make you get better? There are a lot of amazing instructors out there that deserve your time and attention, and a lot that don't. Right? I think a fair question is am I going to get better in your class? Is it supervised drills? And what sets you apart? The things that we would ask on every large purchase, right? Think about the last $500 purchase you did of a product. How many times did you compare sites, look up YouTube reviews, all these different things, right? And you got a clear answer of what your purchase was going to be, but often we don't do that with firearms, especially pistol training, right? I would invite people to become better consumers with that. And I'm not just talking about, hey, everybody come train with me. There's, a myriad of amazing instructors out there. Jim's one of them. My buddy AJ Zito's one of them. There's guys out there like Matt Little, Donovan Moore, Jared Rustin, Dan Brokos, Bill Blowers. The list goes on and on and on, right? But these guys will tell you how you're going to get better in the class. Be better consumers, and that'll get the supervised drill amazing instructors out of the business, right? Other than that, man, just get better and know what it means to get better. Define a metric to your training, have purposeful practice, and seek the training that's going to get you there.
Awesome. I love it. It makes perfect sense. Kurt Carpenter said, Jim, you're up late.
Yeah, you ain't lying. Those first B8s in the morning. I got TD2, a wrestling group tomorrow morning. Those first B8s.
Oh, they're going to be tired too, man. They're actually texting me right now.
Are you training with the wrestling group tomorrow?
I did, yeah. My TD1 was today. TD2 is tomorrow. So,
and I'd love to have you back on with one of your students, and I'd love to get some guys from the wrestling group on.
Yeah.
But let me wrap it up, give you guys the rest of your evening back since you're on the East Coast and it's a lot later there than it is here. We appreciate everybody jumping on and listening with us. We appreciate you guys bestowing your time and your knowledge and your expertise on us and our listeners. Want to thank you for keeping us the safest podcast on the internet with 0 desk pops or negligent discharges, and I think 39 or 40 episodes so far. So that's awesome. Going to keep that streak alive. Remember, it's your life, it's your safety and protection, it's your responsibility. Y'all have a good night. Stay safe. Man, we really hope you enjoyed listening to that episode as much as we did interviewing and having our guests on. Be sure to share this with your friends and family and head over to patreon.com/afteractionproject. We'd love to have you on as a guest panelist, and be sure to check out those other rewards that we have for our Patreons.
If you're a recent graduate of a firearms-related training course and would like to join us on our show, or if you'd like us to review a specific firearm-related training course or instructor, shoot an email to show@afteractionproject.com. Remember to join a local firearms advocacy organization. As always, stay safe, shoot straight, and remember to secure your firearms so that unauthorized persons cannot gain access to them.